Shut it down. The season on the brink. Brock Purdy throwing not one, not two, but 3 interceptions at 49ers camp. What it means, got one of his receivers back, though. The rookie, Ricky Pearsall, first rounder. In pads, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate all of our everydayers out there that are subscribed up. We appreciate you if you're not subscribed up, but we really like it when you do hit that subscribe button. And there's a lot of everydayers that aren't subscribed, which is curious to me. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. We've got tons of Olympics, Major League Baseball all summer long, and of course, those tasty NFL prop bets, 2024 futures bets at FanDuel. And all customers get a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Croc. Big news of the day as the 49ers put pads on for the first time in a 2024 training camp in the second block of practices after a day off Sunday. Come back Monday, pads on, and what happens? Brock Purdy starts throwing all those interceptions, and this is a story that's happened before at training camp for Brock Purdy and the 49ers, and much was made of some past interceptions for Purdy. Did not affect him in the regular season. I don't expect it to here. What do you think, Croc? 3 interceptions by Brock Purdy, at least 2 of them, according to reports, were for sure his fault as well. Brock Purdy, 3 picks at 49ers camp. What to make of it? What to make of any of these statistics at camp, which is now a regular thing every year? I feel like the camp stats started with Trey Lance and Jimmy G, right? In 2021?
It started before that. It started with Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, yeah, okay. The Chip Kelly season, 2016.
That was the first time. Like, look, I go back to my years playing at any level, and specifically at the NFL level, and I don't recall any stats being kept at practice. Now, the coaches, they watch the film. They grade you on every single play. You get a plus, you get a minus, and you kind of add those up at the end of the film session. But as far as actual statistics, not something that I've ever been aware of, especially it wasn't something that was going on in the media. But I don't know, the Colin Kaepernick and Blaine Gabbert, it just brought something out of everybody, and all of a sudden you are seeing stats being kept at practice. Now, I will say this, as someone who definitely wasn't on hand, wasn't in the podcast industry at the time, it did give me some semblance of what's going on at practice and kind of how the quarterbacks are doing. And obviously we saw that continue with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. But now with Brock Purdy, I feel like once a guy has solidified himself as the guy, you throw all the stats out the window. When Jimmy Garoppolo threw 5 interceptions, and not just 5 interceptions at practice, 5 consecutive interceptions, which is mind-blowing, I did not care. And, lo and behold, the 49ers, they ended up winning the first 8 games of the season. So, like, how much does it really matter? As it pertains to Brock Purdy, that stuff doesn't matter to me. The one thing that I would like to see him, I wouldn't even say get better at, because we talked about deep passing a little bit. And before we got on here, we were talking about some of the deep throws of 49ers. He was like one of the best, if not the best, completion percentage on vertically pushing passes. So, the 49ers don't throw a ton of deep balls, but when they do, they were very successful doing it. He has airmailed some in this training camp. He also overthrew or underthrew a decent amount last year coming off of the injury. But at this point in his career, in his development, training camp interceptions is not something that I even take a second look at, oh my goodness, he threw 3 picks in practice. Like, I do not care. Again, we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's episode. I feel like I know what I'm getting from Brock Purdy. So whether he throws 3 interceptions in practice or 0, it doesn't matter because I know come week 1, I have an idea. I can probably almost correctly guess what his stats will be for that game.
Or 3 touchdowns too. Yeah, like, I feel like we already know exactly what you're getting from Brock Purdy. And so, yeah, no worries there for me with him. And every interception is not the same too. And again, this is practice. So you're working on things. Why did an interception happen? My big worry with Brock would be like, why did an interception happen? Oh, is there a throw he can't make? You know, did he try to throw a deep out and it just fluttered and he couldn't get it there? And guys are picking it off. That's something that you're not going to be able to fix, right? Is Brock Purdy's arm not up to snuff? Are balls dying in the wind? Is he not being able to hold on to the ball because it's a little bit wet and rainy? Like something that might actually show its rear its ugly head during a football game in the regular season. If it's just him, throwing some darts in camp and really and going back to Trey Lance, why Lance didn't make it with the 49ers is he wasn't willing to let it rip. Those are Kyle Shanahan's words too. Brock Purdy lets it rip in practice, and better to put the ball in harm's way in practice, figure out what you can and can't do, work on things so you're not throwing those interceptions in the games.
I think as it pertains to Brock, and you talked about some of the throws he can or can't make, right? Now this is the part where you can nitpick a certain throw or interception and try to see if he would do something different moving forward. One of the interceptions that he threw today was him throwing off of his back foot. Defensive lineman just cleanly beat one of the offensive linemen. I think it was Aaron Banks that got beat by maybe Hargraves. And Brock throws off his back leg, throws an interceptable pass. So you go back and you see, is this something that has always been an issue for him? Ideally, you don't want him throwing off his back foot. And there are some guys, Jordan Love, he's got a monster contract just now. If I'm not mistaken, he was throwing kind of off balance against the 49ers and threw an interception. But then you go and you look and you see, has Brock ever been good at that throw? And if he hasn't, right, maybe it's an arm strength thing or whatever, then you want to really discourage that even during training camp, because it's like, you know what? You don't have that pitch in your repertoire. Like, that's not your thing. So you just want him to be more consistent with, even if it's a situation like that, either eat it, which means take the sack, or, just try to scramble out of there. But what you don't want him to do is throw off the back leg. Again, if that continues to be an issue. But if somebody can pull up a bunch of clips of him throwing off of his back leg and he's throwing with velocity, then it's not an issue. And I'll use Josh Allen as an example. I see Josh Allen throw some of the dumbest interceptions, but I've also seen him make some wicked throws and passes that other people shouldn't do. He maybe shouldn't do, but he can get away with it because he have a bigger arm, and that can sometimes get him into trouble a little bit. So there's that kind of yin and yang and that kind of balance right there that you're trying to figure out. But I think with Brock Purdy, as it pertains right now, what he is and what he's showing to be, maybe not somebody that you want throwing off of his back leg, and you know what's going to happen if he does that, but more times than not, a guy that completed almost 70% of his passes, was one of the most efficient throwers in the NFL, has been like the best ever in that like 10 to 20 yard intermediate range. It's just not something that I'm like overly worried about. And even if week 1 comes, they're playing against the Jets, he throws off his back foot, he throws an interception, that's not something that I would foresee him doing again and again and again.
And it's a lot easier when you already know what a player is and who a player is and how he plays. If it was, I get it more if you're just learning about a guy and we don't know anything about him. He's throwing a bunch of picks in camp. Then I would understand why you'd weigh it heavier. But we've seen him throw picks in camp and then not in the regular season. So it makes it even less worrisome, which it shouldn't be much of a worry anyway. So the 0 out of 10 on the worry meter for Brock Purdy throwing 3 interceptions in a training camp practice.
Are you worried that there could potentially be an uptick in the amount of interceptions that he throws? Well, because we did see him put the ball in harm's way a little bit. Again, most of the time he's on target, he's efficient, he's on time. But we have seen him, he started throwing a little bit of interceptions. We saw 4 interceptions in one game. Again, not all his fault, but it is your fault because you're the one that threw the ball. So regardless of how it ended up happening, we saw against Green Bay where they weren't able to take advantage of it, but a ball hitting a couple of DBs in the chest, and they just flat out drop it. And I don't want to say that, like, I don't want to put that on Brock as if that doesn't happen against for other quarterbacks, right? Like, Mahomes actually threw interceptions in the Super Bowl, like multiple times against 49ers now. So is that something that you think may end up hurting him in the long run? Threw an interception, against the Lions, right? So, we are talking about a guy who did put the ball in harm's way last training camp. Seems like right now he hasn't up until this point, but now he did sometimes in the postseason. Is that something that you think can become an issue?
It's something that can hurt you. Interceptions are big too. So to throw, and he's got a gunslinger mentality, and especially as a rookie. So, last offseason, going from rookie year into year two, a lot of picks weighs a little bit more to me in practice, just because he did put the ball in harm's way a little bit more. And there were some times where it was like, oh man, he looks a little bit weird. Things look pretty sped up for him, but he looks so much better in year two than year one in that regard. And yeah, there were some balls that hit defenders in the chest that weren't dropped, that were dropped, but that happens. We saw the 49ers drop a pretty famous one against Matthew Stafford, who's another guy who puts the ball in harm's way at times and is still a pretty good quarterback. Yeah, I'm not worried about it at all. It is something that he has to make sure he continues to be on top of, because you don't want to start turning the ball over a lot. You start turning the ball over, you start losing football games too. And so it's something that is in there a little bit just innately because of his gunslinger mentality, but he makes more big plays because of that mentality than mistakes.
I'm looking at the stats right now, quarterbacks and interceptions that they thrown last year, and it doesn't look like anything too alarming. He's right there. He threw 11 interceptions. He's in the same ballpark as Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, Mac Jones, Desmond. I mean, there are some that just like, okay, this quarterback is terrible. But Jared Goff, a guy who I think played very well last year, he threw 12 interceptions. So Josh Allen is, oh my goodness. I don't think I knew Josh Allen threw 18 interceptions last year. Is this correct?
Josh Allen's a gunslinger too. He'll put the ball in harm's way. Yeah, he will.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. But
he used to not be that big of a number for interceptions. I mean, we talked about the Cowboys winning a Super Bowl with Troy Aikman throwing more interceptions than touchdowns in the season.
Well, yeah, that was like back in the day. I think Kurt Warner was NFL MVP throwing 22 picks. So
yeah.
But now quarterbacks are much more efficient with not turning the ball over because of, just the rules, how spread out things are. It's a little easier to throw the ball so you don't see a high amount. So that's why, Brock Purdy at 11, that's fine. But Josh Allen at 18, Jalen Hurts at 15, Patrick Mahomes at 14. And that's not including passes that they had dropped by defenders, right? So it seems like there are some guys that are putting the ball in harm's way a little bit more than him, and some guys that we're probably not complaining about them doing it. So I don't think I'm gonna complain too much about what Brock Purdy has going on right now.
I'm looking real quick here at turnover-worthy throws. 21 turnover-worthy. Sorry, this is turnover-worthy plays, I believe, from Brock Purdy last year. 21. So that includes balls that were dropped, that were potentially interceptable, fumbles, and all those things. So 21 on the season, and that's from Pro Football Focus. And Pro Football Focus, it's why I think some people were like upset about the grade that Brock Purdy had. It was still a really good grade last year, but some people were upset about his grade because they thought, he played better than that. I think those are some of the reasons why, which is one of the reasons I like to cross-check with PFF, because they, if you throw the ball to the other team's chest, they grade you that way, even though it might not show up in the stat book if the guy drops. Yeah. All right, we got to move along here. Ricky Pearsall, we saw him in pads with the 49ers for the first time, and there's a rumored contract out there for another star wide receiver that might have a pretty big impact on Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And I know we all love sports. It's why we're here, and you never want them to stop. And that's why this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. All you got to do is open up the FanDuel app and dream up any bets anytime you're in the mood, whether it's the Olympics or Major League Baseball or those NFL bets, prop bets, NFL futures. You could bet on Ricky Pearsall being rookie of the year. You could bet on over-under win totals. You could bet on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl and so much more. And, of course, everything Olympics related. So head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Right, Croc. Ricky Pearsall. I don't know if you saw any of the clips, but Ricky Pearsall was at practice. He was in uniform. He was in pads, as Kyle Shanahan said he would be, to start the second block of practices after nursing a little bit of a hamstring this summer. And I don't think there was any big takeaways with Ricky Pearsall. I wasn't there to see him. I think he's someone we're going to watch a lot tomorrow when we are there at training camp practice. And I can't wait to see what Ricky Pearsall looks like. But so I'm getting some work in on the side, and someone was taking video of him. I think it was Samuel Womack that he was doing some little drills with, some footwork drills. And Ricky Pearsall obviously puts in work. He's a gym rat. He puts in time. And he was trying to work on something with his release. And I saw some videos of him working in the offseason too. And I'm really interested to hear what you think about it when you see him at practice tomorrow, because almost too, like, it looks good for the gram, but it didn't look like, at least with the drill and the work they were doing post-practice, didn't look like Sam Womack was having too much of a problem figuring out where he was going off of his release. Almost like too many steps, almost too much footwork from Ricky Pearsall. And I don't know if that's a possible thing or it's a thing that young wide receivers will do, but almost too much going on with his release.
I think that's something that you learn. You listen to Devontae Adams, right? If any of you have heard him in an interview or when he starts talking about the receiver position, a lot of what he does is playing off of the defensive back, but there's not a whole lot of wasted movements, not a lot of wasted steps. It's, I'm either going right now because he's either being patient, I'm going to go, or I'm going to set him up. And he kind of does it more like a basketball, right? Got a lot of large Bay Area following that listen to this podcast. If you have Steph Curry at the top of the key, and I don't know, Steph Curry is a great example because he doesn't do a whole lot of what I'm saying. But anyways, regardless, Steph Curry at the top of the key, and he's, going to cross you over. He's not planning how he's going to cross you over. He's going to make his move based off how you reacted, and he's going to react off of that and then go by you. And a lot of the work that he does makes it to where he can put himself in that position and his body can react the way he wants it to, but it's not something that's predetermined, pre-planned, like, all right, I got Brian Peacock in front of me. I'm going to jab left, hezzy, cross over, go behind the back, and then go right by him. It's really just, if he catches you leaning, got him, and then I'm going to go, right? And I'm going to go by him. And I think with a receiver, once he gets that where it's not pre-planned, but he's not doing a whole lot of thinking, and he's just able to react right now based off how the look that the defender's giving him, that's when we'll see a better version of him. But I think that's something that comes a little bit more with time, especially for a lot of young receivers, because defensive backs at the NFL level, they are just better.
And he doesn't have to do all that if Brian Peacock's in front of him either. So it doesn't take many moves at all. I can't wait. To see what Ricky Pearsall looks like. Get a practice under his belt, and then and hopefully he's full go. And yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So I'm seeing some of the stuff that you are talking about. Shout out to Brad Graham for the SF Niners. He posted some clips of them doing some work, and you see this is what we call a double stick. I'm actually not sure if, just based off of that, he could be working Womack as opposed to Womack working him.
He's giving Womack a look, and Womack's trying to say, okay, I want to stay square here. Get the right hand in here. Not the you don't want to throw the hands too early, right? If you're a DB too.
Oh, he did a really good job of feet before hands. Now, if Coach Croc, all right, Coach Croc is coaching up Womack here. The one thing I would tell Womack is, all right, once the receiver makes his move, don't get overzealous and shoot that outside hand, because if you are lined up head up to inside shade, and the first hand that you shoot is your left hand, it can potentially lock your hips, especially if you have a receiver that's really good with hand play and hand usage, and he knocks that hand down or he pulls it through, you will be in trouble as a defensive back. So again, if Coach Crocky was there, and I would tell him, like, hey, good job with your patience, good job with your feet. You always want to go with the positives first. Good job with the patience, good job with your feet. Now, let's try not to shoot that outside hand first. When you can shoot your outside hand first, if you're in cover 2, maybe a cover 3 bail, and you're more outside shade, then you're fine. But it's not something that you want to get in the habit of doing on a consistent basis if you're lined up in man coverage with more inside shade.
A couple notes here on the wide receivers from Kyle Shanahan's press conference after practice Monday. Rookie wide receiver Jacob Cowing has a hamstring injury now, and it looks like he's going to be out for 10 days. So trading places with Ricky Pearsall on the injury front there with the hamstring injuries. You see that a lot with rookies in OTAs and in camp have those soft tissue injuries because they've just been, they've been doing so many different workouts, and then all of a sudden football comes and just, their body's not quite ready for it. And so that's unfortunate. Jacob Cowing is going to be out for about 10 days with a hamstring now. Tay Martin looks like the same thing, is going to be out for about 10 days. It is a higher grade hamstring strain than they thought for rookie running back Isaac Guerrero. So it's going to be weeks for him before he's back. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how Drake Jackson's injury, it's just one of those that sometimes can take a long time with that kind of surgery on the knee. And so it's going to be a while for Drake Jackson. So that's unfortunate for him. So there's some bad news on the injury front there. But I got another note that's super interesting. A couple of notes from Kyle Shanahan talking about his team and what it was like with pads on, the running back battle, which there might be a running back battle that we didn't know existed, Croc, and rumors about a CeeDee Lamb contract, how much money it could be, what that might mean for Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Gametime. It is the place to go for tickets to Major League Baseball, NFL games, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, whatever it is near you. Go to Gametime, and Gametime actually is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes it even easier and faster to get those tickets, and prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Killer last-minute deals up to 60% off those tickets and last-minute tickets. By the way, you can get tickets up to an hour after your event starts, no matter if it's a sporting event or a concert or a comedy show. All-in prices, views from your seat, their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes all the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets or NFL tickets, as it were. And I'm sure a lot of fans could use that $20 off to go buy themselves tickets to a 49ers game, as a fan recently told us on our live broadcast yesterday. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, according to Kyle Shanahan, there might be a battle for running back too, Croc, behind Christian McCaffrey. Whatever scraps Christian McCaffrey is going to leave behind. And according to Kyle Shanahan earlier this spring, he's trying to take some of the workload away from Christian McCaffrey. We'll see if that actually happens. But this is what Kyle Shanahan said. He was asked about Mason and if Mason was actually battling with Elijah Mitchell for the second running back spot. And he said, quote, nothing against Elijah, but JP runs at a very high level. He went on to talk about how Mason has gotten better and better and that they're both good running backs. And he said it's always about having a stable of running backs to where no matter if it's the second or the third or even the fourth guy, he expects them to be able to run the ball like a starter when they get a shot in the game. But it does sound like Jordan Mason might have an opportunity to be RB2 for the 49ers this year, which is an interesting development, or at least on even ground with Elijah Mitchell. If there was to be an injury to Christian McCaffrey, maybe it would just be a straight 2A, 2B situation with those two backs being a committee. But we know that Kyle Shanahan doesn't love a committee. He wants to run one running back as much as he can.
Which is crazy because that's like the opposite of how we looked at him coming into it. It was like, okay, Atlanta Falcons, you have Devontae Freeman, you have Tevin Coleman. Oh, man, like Kyle loves these dual backs. And he gets to the Niners and it's like, if I have to, I will, but I would love to just run Elijah Mitchell 27 times, even though he has a broken finger, broken ribs, broken knee, everything's broken, but we're still going to run him 27 times. So clearly he wants to, the lead back, he wants to just make sure, like, do you know what you're doing? And not just for lead back, I think any back out there. And if there's any part of your game that he doesn't quite trust, you're going to get fewer and fewer carries. And even fewer carries since you have Christian McCaffrey, who just doesn't want to come out at all. You almost have to try to protect him from himself. As far as the running back battle goes, I think these two guys, they're kind of different backs a little bit. Now, I've heard a lot of people saying that the reason why JP Mason isn't quite RB2 or maybe doesn't get the touches that people expect him to get is because oh man, poor pass protection, maybe some blown assignments a little bit. And again, that's me speaking. I don't want to say out of ignorance, but I don't know. It's not like I watch film and like, okay, is JP Mason supposed to block to the left on this? Like, I don't know, but that's some of the things that people are saying. I'm like, okay, it can make a little sense as to why he's maybe not getting touches. Somebody who runs well, runs hard. We see him break off some big runs. Why is it that he isn't on the field a little bit more? So if he's starting to get those things down, he's more comfortable. This is really cool. The 49ers just be able to have the same backs, back-to-back years like this. There is an opportunity where he's getting a little bit better, and now he's competing for more reps. And I think that's something that's going to make him better. It's going to make Elijah Mitchell better as well. Make the team better in turn.
So there's a rumor out there, and I don't know if you know who Pretty Ricky is, Croc, but Pretty Ricky has made himself into a pretty well-known and pretty trusted source on the internet. He's like, it goes like Schefter, then Ian Rappaport, then Pretty Ricky. Like that's the pecking order right now on Twitter for newsbreakers. And apparently Pretty Ricky, and I don't know the history of Pretty Ricky. I'm saying it a little bit tongue in cheek, but everyone seems to trust him. Said he had the draft picks before the draft happened. So he's got a job where he's plugged in enough to where he hears some things somewhere, even though he seems like just a random poster, but he's been right on a lot of stuff apparently. He dropped a nugget today saying that CeeDee Lamb is on the verge of signing a 4-year, $136 to $138 million contract, which is $34 to $34.5 million per year with the Dallas Cowboys, a 4-year extension, which is just barely less than what it's actually right in between what Bosa and Justin Jefferson make as the highest paid non-quarterbacks in the NFL. Jefferson 35 per year, Bosa's 34 per year. This rumor, if it's the right number, puts him right at $34.5 million per year. And I said, responding to this, that is great news for Brandon Aiyuk. Obviously, the more money at the position is better news for you and helps your stance if you're Brandon Aiyuk. But I said, because Ayuk's much more comparable to CeeDee Lamb than he is Justin Jefferson. And if Lamb is now getting that money too, then Brandon Aiyuk is like, well, I better get not only 30, but maybe a little over $30 million because I'm as good as CeeDee Lamb. It's harder for him to say that about Jefferson, in my opinion. It's easier for him to say that about Lamb. Say, look, if I got all the targets Lamb got, if I was in a different offense and didn't have all these weapons around me, the statistics would be the same, even though Lamb obviously has more catches, maybe less efficiency than Brandon Aiyuk. What do you think about that? Because I got some pushback. And I feel like 49ers fans are almost putting on their GM hats when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk right now. Because when we talk about what Brandon Aiyuk might make, there was, like Douglas on Twitter said, he isn't on Lamb's level. He's more like Waddle or St. Brown, 26 to 29 mil range. Drew says, Lamb and Jefferson statistically pretty far ahead of most everyone else. But then if you asked these fans if there wasn't a contract involved, you said, hey, who's better, Aiyuk or CeeDee Lamb? They would want their guy. They would say, Aiyuk's just as good as CeeDee Lamb. He just doesn't get as many targets, which is what Brandon Aiyuk's argument probably is right now. And so I don't think Aiyuk will get what Lamb is going to get if he gets that rumored amount. But I do think it strengthens his position, because I think if you put Aiyuk on the Cowboys and you put Lamb on the 49ers, I don't think it would look all that different.
Okay, it's hard. When I watch CeeDee Lamb, it's tough because you just can't get the vision out of your brain of just how much they use them. And I think when we're talking money, especially, roughly $34 million per year, it's justified when you look at how the Cowboys use Lamb. Like, he is their guy. Like, he's their offense. We will see what Ezekiel Elliott at running back this year. That's who you're running back. Like, Lamb is going to be their run game. And when I say run game, screens. Like, how many screens will they end up throwing to CeeDee Lamb? Then they move him around. They use him everywhere in the offense. And I think that is the frustrating thing for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I'm not going to say Brandon Aiyuk is better or isn't better or anything like that, because the crazy thing is we don't know. And as long as he's in the 49ers offense, we won't know. We will not know what he's fully capable of doing in an offense that uses him more, even if you have more eyes on him. You talked about the efficiency with Lamb, right? Lamb's efficiency is not as high as Aiyuk's. Well, of course not. Like maybe he faces, some more number one corner. Maybe he has a little bit more brackets coverage, so you could see the efficiency fall off. But to kind of even things out a little bit, you're moved around more. You face a little bit more softer coverage, playing in the slot more, lining up there. Even if you are bracketed because there's a safety, well, the guy that's actually in front of me is either some random nickel corner, or it could be a linebacker, or it could be another safety as well. So Lamb has more favorable matchups, even though sometimes they might throw a bracket at him. So, I think it's tough, man. And I think that's the argument. If I am Brandon Aiyuk, like I'm the most efficient receiver in the league. There's nothing I don't do. And you and we always talked a lot about, we want to see him get better at contested catches. He wasn't quite great contested catch guy in college. And, in the NFL, we haven't quite seen that. That's the next step. Between that and I think there is one area where CeeDee Lamb has him, and he's always kind of had him. But maybe run after catch. I think CeeDee Lamb has been a better run after catch. Here's the thing. CeeDee Lamb, so far in his career, has been a better contested catch guy and better run after catch.
Which is crazy because I thought Aiyuk, that was the thing he was going to be great at, was run after catch.
Right.
I thought college Aiyuk looked more like Debo than Lamb, but NFL Aiyuk has looked more like Lamb than Debo.
Yeah, and Lamb coming out of college, he was great run after catch, but it was like, oh well, he's in the Big 12. Like they're not playing defense, they're not tackling, they're not even trying. He's running circles around guys. But at the NFL level, I think he's been, I won't say just as good, but taking that next step, like that's been a strength of his. The run after catch. I watch him catch the ball and then spin off of guys, and he's doing a lot of things where maybe Aiyuk quite isn't doing that. So I wouldn't say that Aiyuk should 100% get the same amount of money, but even with what Aiyuk has done, I do think it pushes him closer to 30 million, like for sure. Right now, again, that's $4 million less per year than CeeDee Lamb. That's $16 million less over, a 4-year contract. But it's like, is he even like further away from Lamb than that? I would say no.
Right. And so if someone said Lamb's better, I'm not going to fight him. If someone said Aiyuk's better, I'm not going to fight him. I'd be like, okay, interesting. Tell me why. And not a lot of people have really good reasons for why either way. But it's close enough to where it shouldn't be a huge gap in salary. And I thought maybe the Jefferson contract was going to be way ahead of everybody. And if it's not, that helps Brandon Aiyuk a lot, I think.
Yeah. Now with the numbers,
and if you're Aiyuk, and if you want $4 or $5 more million per year than what the Niners are offering, just wait an off season because you'll get it next year.
Well, he'll get more even if they franchise tag him with the way that these contracts are going, because you got the Jefferson one, you got the Lamb one coming up, and now you also have Jamar Chase, who's doing like a hold in. So if I'm not mistaken, the way the franchise tag works is like a combination of the top 5 guys at your position. So if everybody's making roughly 34, 30, 33, 34, 35 million per year, Aiyuk even on a tag will get north of $30 million.
Right.
So at least for a year, just no long-term longevity in that.
Yeah. You went from just having Tyreek making $30 million a year to now 5 guys making $30 million a year.
Yeah.
In one off season.
But nobody wants that because, like, I don't want to play on the tag. You never know. The biggest thing he has working against him is the 49ers offense. It works for him and it works against him. It works for him because got a lot of guys in his offense. You maybe don't get the same type of looks from a defense. Just beat my guy. It works against him because they don't do anything to like free him up consistently. They're not going to force feed him the ball. And gosh, there was one more thing that it doesn't work again. There's just never going to be that influx in targets for him. There's one other point I had. I forgot it. Too many hits to the head.
CeeDee Lamb had 180 targets last year.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is their offense.
Yeah. That's stuff you rarely, if ever, have seen in the NFL, to be targeted 181 times. I mean, that's nearly twice as many targets as Brandon Aiyuk got last year. It's crazy.
Yeah. Lot of targets. Brandon Aiyuk, man, I mean, I'm curious to see how this plays out. I mean, at least he's been at practice. He's on the field. Obviously, the other day he was seen, talking to John Lynch. Haven't quite seen that at today's practice, but I'm curious to see what it looks like when you and I are there And I say today's practice, but Tuesday's practice, you and I will be there, and we'll kind of get to see this with our own eyes.
I can't wait. I'm pumped for it. Let us know what we should be looking for at PD Peacock, at Crocky209. Drop a comment on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.